Welcome back to The Things We Know. I'm Lisa Callahan.
And I'm Carrie Morin.
And today we're bringing on my other child, the one and only Charlotte Callahan. So Carrie and I planned this topic a while back because of the experiences so many of us have had around harassment, very blatant, sort of subtle, constant, walking down the street. And when I was telling Charlotte about this, I said, we're calling it You Too versus Me Too. The fact that it still happens every day, you immediately were like, oh, I need to be on that pod. I need to be a guest on there. And yeah, she's not wrong. I mean, I think if you don't have this experience, or you don't have a daughter that's having this experience every day, you could be fooled into thinking that Me Too solved everything.
You'd have to live under a rock. I don't have daughters. I have nieces, and my sons have really fun female friends, and I know your daughters,
Yeah.
And it's so maddening. It's so maddening and so important. I think what I love about that, your reaction, Charlotte, though, is that you feel empowered to know it's wrong. Right? Obviously, you know that you have great parents, you know that you can speak up, and you even want to. That's a win, because at your age, there's no way I had any clue that it wasn't normal. I wasn't clueless either. I would say I was pretty strong-willed, pretty independent, smart, and I didn't know that there wasn't an option. I just think I got trained and conditioned really well to know how to dodge and duck and pretend I didn't hear something, so I could go about what I needed to do and get myself somewhere safe, and also just dismiss it, but not take it head on, and not even know that there was words for that.
Well, and I think that's the thing. I mean, to me, that was the sort of mind-blowing piece of the Harvey Weinstein, Matt Lauer, Me Too movement is, I grew up, you and I obviously both grew up in the 80s. And I remember when my mom went to work for, I won't name the aerospace company that she worked for, but, and I remember her stories in the 90s about her boss calling her in to show her porn on his computer. And it sort of harkens even back to the Mad Men era, where women we just put up with it. And I think because and of course we all same time, right? We're living through Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas and that bullshit. But somehow in my mind, I thought, okay, that was then. And then the Harvey Weinstein stuff comes out. And it affects me particularly because we had literally just signed Charlotte up for acting. So you're 10 or 11, and we had just signed her up for acting classes in September, and in October, the Harvey Weinstein stuff comes out. And it's burned into my memory, standing there watching it on the Today Show, ironically, and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Maybe I shouldn't. I thought casting couches were a thing of the past, and I just didn't even cross my mind. That was not something I was worried about when I signed her up for acting, and then all of a sudden I was. And so yeah. But that being said,
a million experiences from teens on just went through my head. So.
Right. It just floods all the way back.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that's it. And we're going to talk about Barbie here in a second, but I think that's part of Barbie as well. But before we get too deep, I will introduce Charlotte in a more official manner. So Charlotte is the composer of our theme music. We've talked about that before, Damage. It's also on the playlist if you guys ever want to hear it. So she is past champion Irish dancer. She is an actor. She is a musician. She is a really good writer, and she is about to enter her senior year at Grand Arts Theater. And so she's looking at colleges to go get her BA in theater.
True.
All true. And
facts.
the thing I'll say about Charlotte is Charlotte is exactly who she's been since being in utero. Like when I was pregnant with Charlotte, I had to lay down at least an hour before I wanted to fall asleep, because the minute I laid down, she was all like dancing and kicking and moving around. So she's also a manifesting generator, for those of you who have listened to our human design pod. And I think there should be literally a picture of her in the human design library or dictionary next to manifesting generator, because this girl is the Energizer Bunny. So welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that we have your wise and badass energy here. And I have seen you in plays. I've heard you perform. I love your music. So I'm a fan.
Thanks.
All right. So let's start with the Barbie movie, because again, this topic was something we came up with months ago. I mean, this was on our original list when we first decided to do the pod, and a lot has changed and happened, and new things have come out since we decided on this. And because the Barbie movie is so fresh, and we have both seen it twice, and had very similar experiences to our reaction to Barbie.
Yes. Yes, it's true, because it's so true. I don't even know if we knew going into watching this movie that this would fit. And we both seen it twice, both Lisa and I. We both we laughed so hard. I mean, Greta Gerwig, I knew, but I knew I would like it, but I was so surprised and delighted by it. I didn't have any massive connection to Barbie growing up. And I was aware of all the derogatory, eye rolly things about Barbie too. I didn't feel that super strong either. I just, I didn't have a ton of Barbies growing up, and I was kind of a tomboy. But I was so surprised and delighted and laughed and laughed. And then the second time, I think we had the same experience. We both cried. We both felt it deeply and very emotional. And maybe for me, it was because I was with my nieces, or the second time and you were with Charlotte your second time, right? But I think I was just allowed to feel it and really kind of go deeper on the parts that I maybe missed while I was laughing.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I did have Barbies growing up, my sister and I, what I think is interesting about Barbie, and they sort of talk about this at the beginning with the whole 2001 reference, but I really didn't start playing with Barbies until I was in the 6th grade. Because by then I could create stories. But yeah, my sister and I had a ton of Barbies. We took our entire basement and would turn it into an entire city. There was a club for them to go dancing. There was a fancy restaurant in the other room where they sold steak and cheese. That was the big fancy.
Yummy.
I know, right?
Oh my God.
So I loved playing with Barbies, and I never had any feeling of I never looked at Barbie and thought, oh, I'm supposed to look like that. I just loved her. I loved playing with her and all her versions. I didn't have a weird Barbie because I made my sister have a weird Barbie. Because I was the older sister, so I'm just mean like that. And it wasn't technically Barbie, it was Marie Osmond. But I literally made my sister cut her Marie Osmond doll's hair. It looked very similar to the weird Barbie in the movie.
Okay, go ahead.
And she was a little psychotic. I'm not gonna lie, that was her whole storyline.
This might be why I don't remember having Barbies, because I might have ruined them. Because it's not that I didn't get any. In fact, my dad was a pilot, and we got the airplane. My sister reminded me recently that we both got them because of my parents. Must have been I don't want them fighting, but they didn't give us a lot of the other stuff. So we had to kind of improvise. And the very short time I remember playing with them, I feel like they were mostly hers, but I must have had my own. And I think I did that. I think I cut things off, but we would use a Nike for a sports car and high heel shoe for a fancy car or something. We kind of improvised, but we had the airplane. That's it. We didn't have any fancy anything else.
Yeah, I had the Corvette. I didn't have, and that's it. But that's was the beauty of Barbie and creating Barbie Land for me was it was really just our basement. We took all the furniture and we made it. We didn't have the house. We didn't have all those things. And so it was really an opportunity to act as big girls, right? Because we were acting through Barbie. And yeah, Ken and Donny Osmond, they didn't have a big role. They just kind of walked behind her, or our Barbies. But yes, so to go back to what you said, for me, I think I went into it knowing I wanted to see it, thought I would laugh hysterically. I did, but I went there for the entertainment value. And by the time the movie was over, and this is where we get to Charlotte. Charlotte and her girlfriends went, but they sat separately from us just because it was opening night, so we couldn't get all tickets together. And they came walking down after the movie and like had been crying, and Charlotte gave me a big hug. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we went back last week, and it was like just us and a few other people in the theater, and it was her and I, and we still laughed hysterically at the same stuff. But all of a sudden, what hit me was, I think, to me, and you could speak to this obviously, but to me, they're new young women just now experiencing all this stuff. You and I are 54. We've been experiencing this for many years. And I feel like we have a callus against us, around us about this, right? We know, yes, I'm going to walk down the street and men are going to say something to me and I'm going to go, huh, and, keep on walking. It's all new experiences for her. So I think for them, I can imagine it felt very like, holy shit, where for me, it felt like,
oh yeah.
It felt like, oh yeah, but also like, oh, people do see us and they understand what we're going through. So it felt like being seen. The experience of being a woman was being shown on the screen in a way that I had never seen it before. The confusion of Barbie when she gets to Venice Beach and she doesn't understand that the construction workers aren't all women. When she looks up and sees Miss Universe and thinks it's the Supreme Court.
Yes.
The fact that she's like, and right out of the gate, she's like, I feel a sense of fear, like that was that thing. I had not been in touch with that because I have a callus over myself from experiencing it for 35 years. And it's
the difference of what they were each feeling, the male and the female. She's like, I don't feel safe. Like I do feel ogled. It's interesting. And he was like, I feel kind of like the center of attention.
I feel empowered. Yeah. All right. So tell me what your experience was. Barbie.
I mean, I loved it. It was, as soon as we got out of that theater, me and my friends were just like, oh my God, holy shit. Like, this is amazing.
But why? What was it? Do you have words for why you felt that way?
Well, it just was our life. Yeah. And I think the big turning point in it, was America's monologue.
Yeah.
What's her last name?
Farrar.
I mean, not only was that performance great, and she is great, but that writing is so true. And it's spot on to the experience. And I think that's a reason why you were like, oh my God, because something like that, exactly what she was saying in that monologue, we are already feeling that and have already been feeling that since we were a little girl. And so I think you didn't realize that to the full extent. And so that was shocking to you in a way of like, we've known this feeling for so long, even as children. And I don't think that dawned.
Yeah, just a general sense of having it said so blatantly. You and I, having had the pod about make your body your bestie and diet culture bites, right? One of the very first things she says is you're supposed to be thin, but you're not supposed to want to be thin. You're supposed to want to be healthy. And I was like,
but still be thin. But still be
thin. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I like it's like right.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
You can't get old. You can't be rude. You can't show off. You can't be selfish. Don't fall down. Don't show fear. Never get out of line.
Yeah. And also be pretty and be fun and be kind. And, it's like.
But don't be too pretty.
Right.
Because then you're not a sister.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And
that's just so true. Or even how she starts it when she talks about like how women just have to be extraordinary to even be accounted for. And that is very accurate.
And another thing too, I'm curious what you thought about this, Charlotte, and if you feel this way, because I was saying you have words and voice and things that I just admire. The part where it said, like, if you point out bad behavior, you're complaining. Right.
Yeah.
You're difficult.
Yeah.
Like there's a problem, like you're the problem if you speak up.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so curious, like how that landed for you and if that's true for you.
Yeah, that is very true for me in many different instances, but also just in the terms of like, I women are automatically deemed as emotional, and I feel like I cannot feel the emotions I'm feeling because it's going to be a burden, or it's going to be seen as complaining, seen as me not being grateful, and
Crazy.
yeah, and I feel like that is so belittling, and I still have trouble with not getting pushed over, not being stepped on because of that one thing I struggle with, of just like, it's like I'm great at opening up. When I trust, I tend to trust too much sometimes, and I love expression in all ways, but even just coming down to identifying my own emotions, I'm not always good at expressing it. And I feel like that is slightly baked in the fact of like, we're not allowed, almost. We're just supposed to be there as a pretty picture. We're not really allowed to be actual human beings with emotions and all that fun stuff that we should be allowed to talk about and express. So, sorry.
No.
There's just,
I know, because we're all both
Yeah.
taking this all in. Like, again, it feels like it's brand new to you. It's old news to us. And because it's old news to us, we just go along to get along. And that was the piece that when I saw it on screen, I was like, holy shit.
It's interesting that you say that, because when you I'm feeling something really deeply uncomfortable, but I don't know if it's that it's what I feel like it is really cringy that these that more progress hasn't been made. Like really cringy that this is still the case. And I feel a little responsibility, right? Like that the daughters and nieces and the women, that they're still holding so much. And we were like kind of part of it before we saw it. It's like the internalized patriarchy. So like part of me is like, we didn't go along with it. We did kind of overcome it, and we still pursued stuff, and we found ways. Like we didn't marry people like that. And we're not trying to perpetuate it with our sons. So there's some sense of overcoming it until you see and hear Charlotte say that. And then it just is so deeply uncomfortable to realize we didn't fix anything. We got around it. We got through some of it. We stepped over here. We found, like the non-toxic people, but the system is still very much.
Yeah. Because another thing is, there is so much still internalized in us, because that's how we were conditioned to grow up. The whole kind of like, even me, like growing up, it was outdated. It was frowned upon to be like a housewife, or to be like, but then there's also housewives nowadays, just moms who tend to stay home, and it should be celebrated, because that's just as important as any job, but I do feel like there is just a lot of our own internalized problems that we were conditioned by men to think, whether it's through media, whether it's through just a simple stereotype that's still slightly talked about in some show, but people don't address it or anything, something that's still problematic, but people are trying to cover it up, in the same way that your favorite line from Barbie of talking about when Ken goes up to that businessman, and he's like, why aren't you doing patriarchy? And he's like, oh, we're just better at hiding it now.
Right.
And that is still very accurate.
My sister was sitting next to me, and she goes, ooh.
Yeah, that was the line. Even the first viewing, I was like,
oh. I think me and my friends we were like, oh, eesh.
Yeah. And it's exactly right. I mean, that's the thing, it's, to me, it's crazy. And again, we're recording this August 10th, and we're not entirely sure when it's coming out, but this week I had to worry that my nieces live in a state where they could lose the ability to make their own medical decisions. And we're not talking Mississippi, we're not talking Alabama, we're talking Ohio. I had to worry about that. It's crazy to me that Charlotte can't take the fucking train without being hit on, sometimes with Google Translate, because the guy doesn't speak English, but he's going to tell her how pretty she is, make her read his phone. It's crazy to me that we assume because men know better, they do better. And that was the line that really struck me, because I think under the auspices of Me Too, things have been set up in a way that makes it look like it's better, but is it better? Probably not. And I hear you with the cringe, but also the other line I loved so much was at some point, moms stand still so their daughters can look.
Yes.
Mothers stand still so daughters can look back to see how far they've come.
How far they've come.
Yes.
And I think I think we've done the best we can, you
Mhm.
know, and we will continue to, and now they know, and they're going to go farther than us.
Yes. And it's ridiculous that it's it's not 19, it's 2023. And I still go back to 2023. And we've never, I mean, this is the first time in the last few years we've actually had a female in one of the 2 highest offices. That's ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous. We haven't gone farther than this. It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing
that we haven't gone
Totally
farther than that. Like, that was what I was like. I was just so cringy about, like, sitting near my nieces going, you deserve better,
Yeah.
you know, and we did too. I'm really, what I want to go back to too, the first thing you told me after, because we don't just talk here, we talk all day long on text.
every day.
The first thing you told me afterwards was that scene in Venice Beach when they first get there. And I say this very carefully, the way they're dressed, because I fucking hate that, you know, that ever, like, how someone was dressed has anything to do with how they were treated. But at first you think it's their loud outfits, but then it becomes really clear what's happening for both of them. And then, like, what happened, like, not just what happened there, but then what happened with, like, the people in authority and how they spoke to her, all of that. Like, I want to hear that firsthand, because I know your mom told me, like, oh yeah, that's me every day.
Yeah. That was definitely, I feel like, a turning point in the movie, because obviously there was many different things sprinkled throughout the first half of the movie where I was like, oh yeah, I connect. Yeah, I resonate. Yeah. But at this scene was where I was like, wow, that's my experience walking 8 minutes to the train and anywhere. Even if I am in a group of people, it still happens. But yeah, that is a thing that I have been experiencing for a while now, of not really being able to go out anywhere without getting hollered at in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes it's more intense than others. Sometimes it just seems like a genuine, very rarely a genuine, just like innocent compliment. And then in the same way of when Margot Robbie simply says, like, mine definitely has an undertone of violence, that's very accurate to any type of verbal interaction. Is, sure, they think it's flattering, but we don't know what could happen. If I react wrong, if I don't react at all, if I react too kind, this could easily escalate into something that could forever change me, and not in a healthy way or a fun way. But I mean, yeah, I am very against going on the train, for instance, now, because that's not a very safe route for me, just in terms of, sure, I really only have to go like maybe one stop or maybe a few stops to get where I want to go, and I will probably be faced with 10 catcalls within the span of that time. So is it really worth it, or can you just drive me, Mom? So it's like, I don't know. I feel bad about it, because I should just be able to take some type of public transport and not have to.
You should feel bad. You should
me.
be able to, but it's not your fault.
Yeah. You have to armor up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you know this story or not, but Liam and Irina were in town over the 4th of July weekend, and we went to celebrate their birthday, and we walked, I don't know, 6-8 blocks. And Liam and Irina were in front of us, and then Charlotte was in between us. Then there was a little space between, and then Darren and I were behind. And
so, like, it didn't entirely
connect. We weren't working we weren't all 6 together, 5 together. So there was a little space. But anyways, Liam and Irina are walking, and they're holding hands. She is clearly with him. And this guy on a fucking scooter comes whipping around them like this, around them. And hey, good, like cat calling Irina. Liam kind of, does a little like stop.
Yeah, because he's not trying to like be your savior or anything. He's
right.
Just kind of like,
just okay. Off. And then he comes around and goes, hey, if you don't take care of her, I will. And And if for those of you not watching YouTube, Carrie's eyes just got ginormous.
And my
Yeah,
nostrils.
and your nostrils, yeah. But then it was so interesting because so he does this a couple times, then he starts to come back and he comes by Darren and I. He's already past Charlie. He comes by Darren, and the guy clearly doesn't realize we're all together. And Darren just yells, "Girls don't like that."
Oh,
And the guy
Darren.
you saw him, he kind of like jumped. And it wasn't like a recognition of like, oh, they don't. It was more like he just didn't know we were all together. But Darren was just, I mean, it just fit to be tied. And Darren will say, Liam knows not to, but Darren has said to both of us, just ignore him, just ignore him. And we both say, hands down, nope, you acknowledge and you move on. You're quick and snappy. Thank you. Uh-huh. Yeah. Because not engaging,
Oh,
I don't think it's
it can be, it feels like it can become unsafe really fast.
Very quickly. It feels way easier for me to look the guy in the eye and say, oh, thank you, than keep on walking, because I don't know what the fuck's going to happen if we keep on walking.
I mean, for instance, this is a standout example of me and my friend Elena. Shout out Elena, I love you. We were walking down the street. We had just gotten off the train. We were coming back to my place after school. And once again, that's only like an 8-minute walk. And it's really just a straight shot. Like, let's say the train is here and we're really just walking down the street, and then
3 blocks, maybe.
It's nothing crazy, but it is, downtown. It's right in the city. And it's literally like, we take one step, we get hollered at. We took 3 more, got another 2 guys coming at us, got another, like, it was 6 times within the span of that 8 minutes. And it was aggressive how much it was happening. I mean, every single time it happened, we just looked at each other and we were like, what? Like,
what is that
happening so much? I mean, like 3 is a good average, but 6 was like a bit extraordinary. Yeah.
Did it range? Was it similar? Like, was it just like, hello?
Like, that time it actually had a lot of variety. They were really creative. The first one was kind of just like, it would be like a little like, God damn. Like, we keep walking and then it's like, you look good. And then I kept walking and a guy on a bike zoomed by and he's like, let me see you squirt. I'm like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what? Or like, another example is, you would think that you would be safe when you're walking with a dude, in the same way with Liam and that situation with Irina. And a lot of the times, if I'm with a guy, or if I'm with a group of guys and some girls or whatnot, they'll look, but they won't really pry or be vocal or anything. But I mean, even example, I was walking around the same kind of area with my dad, and a guy says to my dad, like, what does he say? He says, where'd you find that? Meaning me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, good for you, man. Like, I need to find, like, oh, he said, does she have a sister? And my dad is like, she's my daughter. And then they're like, oh, sorry. But I'm just like, I'm never safe. Even with
so suddenly it was disrespectful because that man had some sort of ownership because he had his last name and he came from him. That's interesting. That suddenly there was an apology. There wasn't any acknowledgement.
There wasn't for Liam.
You deserve it.
The guy didn't give 2 shits that Liam was clearly with Irina. He was just gonna, he was gonna edge Liam out, because that's what we all want. We all want a man on a scooter to hit on us. That's what we're all looking for.
That's my dream.
Not Prince Charming.
That's not even like the passenger side of your best friend's ride. It's a scooter that you probably are paying by the hour for.
That is a definite scrub.
Yeah.
That's a song we should have used, is Scrubs.
Oh, scrubs.
Gross. Oh, I'm so I'm feeling a lot of feelings. And I hear that and I think, like, so much about it, because I love the way you express yourself with fashion. I love the way you dress. I love the way I love your self-expression, because you're an artist, but because you're just this vibrant human. And I love that you don't change that for anyone. And I also hate that you have to armor up, and that, like, it has to even be funny for you, because it's like, okay, I guess I can't do this, but it is a lack of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a disrespect.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of just how normal it was, and that like there's something timeless about it, which sucks, but it's also like it was so normal that I didn't even think of telling my parents about it because it was just like duh.
Yeah.
And I thought if I did, then they would get really upset. Like if they knew how my boss was talking to me or how customers were talking to me, like I might have to quit or lose my job. And then I'm a problem. And then like so there was just
effect.
Right. You just like, it's like what I call like middle seat mentality. You just kind of suck it in and just like get through the flight, because you don't really have a lot of elbow room. That's what it's like. It's just, how do I get where I want to go and like get what I want safely and without any trouble?
Yeah.
That's a lot of freaking compromise just to be existing.
And I don't even tell you guys like it'll happen. Once again, it's come to a point where I'm just like, oh, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, I think it happens every day. You tell us the extraordinary ones.
I tell you the ones where I'm like, listen to this one.
Yeah.
This one's going to get you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love fashion. I always have. I have a very fun time with fashion because I love the fact that I can be androgynous and feel more masculine in certain pieces of clothing. I love the fact that I can rip down the barrier of male versus female clothing because it doesn't really matter because it's just a piece of cloth. So I love that I get to do that. But when it comes to me feeling hyper feminine or anything like that, and I love to wear tiny skirts, I think it fits my body well. I have boobs. That's a thing that she gave me. I'm like, I have certain desirable facts that also put me in the hot blonde porn category, and so I don't want to take away things that make me feel confident on my way to school if it's gonna mean that I don't know. It's just like
there should not be consequences of feeling sexy. There should not be consequences of feeling good.
Yeah, I don't want to sacrifice.
You aren't deserving it. Right. Right.
Exactly. Like, why sacrifice what I like to wear and what makes me happy just out of the fear of a holler or a few words from a random man on the street that I'm never going to see again. So it's just, I'd rather pick what makes me happy over having to diminish my expression for that.
And the reality of it is, it doesn't matter if you're dressed in big baggy clothing or the short skirt and a tank top. As you were talking, I just had this flashback when I was just out of college. Myself and a couple of girlfriends went to Chicago. We were still living in Dayton, and we went to Chicago for the Jazz Fest. I was dressed in big baggy, they were shorts, they were jean shorts, but they were baggy, and a Todd Rundgren t-shirt. And I'm surprised I'm alive, but I ended up with my girlfriends at a bachelor party.
Oh my gosh.
Long story. But I am dressed in, again, a Todd Rundgren concert t-shirt, and they thought I was the stripper. So it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, no,
you're wearing.
I can look like shit and a half, and they still find something to holler for, and I'm like, really? I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with what you're wearing. Although it's interesting, and I'm curious. What I do have a question at the end of this for you, which I'm hopeful for your answer. But I think about, our moms and I say that in general because maybe your mom didn't do this, but like my mom's generation thought they were doing the best they could to keep us safe by warning us about what to wear, right? And definitely gave the impression that it was sort of my responsibility how that affects, men, like they have no control over their, like what they do with like being turned on or being attracted. You know what I mean? Like this, like you'll give them ideas or like men will, respond to that. So am I saying that correctly? Right. Like, so there was like this sort of safe, like, be careful. And that was with love and protection, and fathers felt that way too. And yet, like, maybe what I'm hopeful for is the difference is it was kind of true. Like our peers then were still kind of under that same world of, I can respond to girls this way, but I'm hopeful that your male peers are not where you're unsafe. It's just like gross men on the street, but maybe you are, maybe it's a mix. I don't know. I'm hoping that it's a little bit better And is that making sense, Lisa? Do you
Yeah.
see what I'm, okay.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah. And I mean, and I have done that to her, and it's not about shaming her in the outfit that she's wearing, but I'm just like, again, and but the thing that's so stupid about that, it's like saying rape is about sex. This is not about sex. This is about fear and control over women. These men, do they really think Sean's going to be like, oh yeah?
Yeah, I'm like, what do you think is going to come from this?
So it's again, it's a fear tactic. It's a control tactic. It's a power tactic. It's not actually meant to, if Charlotte probably based on who she is and how she looks, if she gave the time of day to any of those men, they would probably run so fucking fast because they wouldn't know what to do
What do you mean?
with a beautiful woman.
Oh, thanks.
That's what I'm saying. But the question I think is, do you feel are there boys your age that are doing the same shit?
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I knew the answer. I appreciate your hopefulness and like anything else, and we want to talk about Alan.
But, okay, so are there boys your age besides Liam that know better and that like really know better?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that totally existed in high volume when we were her age.
Well, I don't know if I mean, there is this state of boys being hormonal and they'll, lose their shit over any girl that talks to them. But I also think I knew good guys back then.
Of course. I mean, we married them.
Yes.
But I just mean
I married him, but he wasn't good back then.
I feel like both exist too. I kind of knew that answer in it, but I was hopeful. I'm hopeful that there are boys who are doing more of what Liam's doing.
There are, but there's just as many boys still doing the same bullshit. That's the thing. That's the problem, is that the guy on the scooter was Liam and Irina's age, probably,
And this is what I love about this movie, because probably Liam, definitely Peter and Miles and Griffin, who all saw it, and my niece's boyfriend who was with us, they responded with yeah, God, but also it's always helpful and just shocking and sad for them to really see those two different perspectives. And mine has an undertone of violence, and it needs to be shown and reminded over and over again. Yeah. So that is what I like about it, is that I'm not seeing young men respond to this movie with offense and I'm not seeing that, at least not the ones I know.
Not the ones we hang around, but I mean, that kind of wraps, we want to move on a little bit more, but that's a good wrap up for this section, which we were joking again. If you're watching us on YouTube, I'm in black and Carrie's in pink. So we're kind of pulling the Barbenheimer look, but I will say, seeing Oppenheimer, while that is a very important movie and a fantastic biopic, Barbie feels so much more important to me because, and I was watching a reel by Mark Maron, and the thing I loved that he said was, Barbie is so unexpected, right? You and I had the experience I think most of us thought we were going to have. We thought we were going to go in, it was just going to be funny and cute. And he said, I'm sort of quoting him here, he said, it thoroughly explains feminist ideas in a way that is funny. And while I have definitely seen plenty of feminists say it doesn't go far enough, I totally agree. But this opens a door in a way that this door has not been opened before. I saw somebody on Facebook say it's like medicine wrapped in cheese. I think that's exactly right. This is the beginning of this conversation, but this is a way more feminist movie, in my opinion, than I've ever seen. I mean, yes, there's plenty of feminist movies, but it hits it on such a brilliant level. And that's what Mark Maron keeps saying. He's like, the script. And then
so brilliant.
Who are railing against it, he goes, that's so embarrassing for them, which is true. Of course, Bill Maher, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, of course those fuckers are against this, because it shows them who we are, and that scares the shit out of them.
Right. Yeah. And I was talking about Liz Plank, who wrote a book for the love of Ken. She had some brilliant points. She's like, I think what's being missed is that men who are offended, like Ben Shapiro, it's because they're identifying with Ken, and they're missing the point that Ken represents patriarchal masculinity that traps them. It doesn't represent men. And if you want to identify with a male, Alan's the one to identify with. because he didn't go along with, there are no duplicates. He can think for himself. He can protect women. He can also come back and serve. Like that's like a true male character to be identified with. And if you really look at all the ways that plays out in both worlds, it's not good for men. It's terrible for men. They don't feel seen. And so instead of identifying with it, it's a bizarre reaction to it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, and I think we said this in another pod, patriarchy doesn't serve men either.
No.
And there are plenty of women who fall prey to the patriarchy. So this isn't about, because it's patriarchy, it's men versus women. Patriarchy is a shit show that is hurting everyone involved. And I told you this, but you and I both have Fuck the Patriarchy. I think you have a necklace. I have earrings from a company called Topple and Burn. And apparently Greta Gerwig bought everyone Fuck the Patriarchy necklaces as their finishing wrapping gift for the movie. And I was like, yay.
Yeah. Yes. I wanted to read a line from her article, from Liz Plank's article, because she was talking about Alan isn't just a strong modern man. He's a true feminist. As she's expressed before, Barbie Land's promise of women doing all the jobs and men doing none of the jobs isn't a feminist utopia. It's just a flipped patriarchy.
Yep.
Right. And that's how it was supposed to feel.
Yep.
Not supposed to feel. Nobody gets to be told how to feel. That's what was hoped would be demonstrated, right? And so it makes Alan's integrity and desire for the common good of both Barbies and Kens seem far more aligned with the integrity of true feminism, where we're all free, regardless of gender.
Yep.
And so like, it's maybe not, we're not saying the future is Barbie land, but something like Alantopia, right? That's what she was saying. It was like Alan, yeah, like that it's inclusive and it sees the balance there. And I love when he goes, I love Michael Cera when he goes, there's no telling what's going to happen. Why? That moment was just my favorite. It's like, you get to break through these molds.
Yeah.
And yet still, I mean, people like if a guy gets compared to being like, in a good way, like, oh, you're so Alan, like you're just a good dude. Then they question their own masculinity and they're
simp,
like,
right?
what?
Simp. That's what I learned. I learned that.
Simp?
Well, I might be really dated on that, but I remember learning that when Miles like stuck up for some, female friend of his, that the guy he was kind of, calling out called him a simp.
Well, that's a derogatory term. And so of course the guy would say that because he was offended.
Yeah.
And so instead of taking responsibility for what he did, he downgraded Miles.
Miles's masculinity. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's so stupid because simp is just a word to cover up a guy being a good person.
Yeah.
Short for sympathetic.
It's sympathetic, right? That's what simp is short for. Yeah, I think it's short for
all I know is that simp is now a word thrown at you if you actually care about a woman. It's like, oh my God.
It's ridiculous.
You actually want to put effort into this relationship with this woman. You actually like care about her thoughts and feelings. Simp, ew, you're so lame. I'm like, wait, they can't care about us? That's not a thing.
And to me, as the mom of 3 white males, like this is so sad for me, right? Like but also this idea in this conversation is so helpful and hopeful because I feel like and like you said, it's maybe just a little bubble I'm in when I'm thinking about it and the people I'm talking to about this movie at the moment, but that there's got to be like, that's a dead end for any emotional, healthy, developing human. Yeah. Like it's a dead end. There is no place for you to run into any trauma and have a healthy way of dealing with it if that's the mold you're trying to be in. So I do think patriarchy is almost worse for men. Like women, we just talked about all the armor and all the ways we've been able to kind of figure out how to succeed despite it, even though it's not fair and we're not free, totally free to like take the train and walk down the street. We're not safe, right? We're not guaranteed safe, but men, like that is a very limited prison way of living. So that's sad to me and hopeful that people see it this way.
Yeah.
Another thing that, which is slightly moving from this topic is the line in the movie that's men hate women and women hate women. The one thing we can all agree on. And I think that is such a running theme. And even coming back to that monologue, when she mentions like, you can't be too pretty because you're a sister, you're part of the sisterhood, is that patriarchy has also just turned women against women. And that's what they do is what they do at that campfire scene when they all like the Barbies all go to different Kens and they just like test their own power and whatnot. That's what men do to women. And that's why women turn against each other in the same way the Kens turned against each other. And that's why we're constantly beating ourselves down in comparison to how men view us. And so they've got us going against each other so that they can then have more power over us. And that is so sadly true and relevant in teenage lives, in 50-year-old women's lives. Like, it's just such a thing that we are constantly, like, even coming down to elementary school, if like you and your girlfriend, when you're like in second grade, you're like, oh, I have a crush on this boy, and then she also has a crush on that same boy, then you guys automatically turn against each other because you're like fighting for the boy's attention. And so it's just like, it's always a thing that we're conditioned to, and it sucks because then your own outlook on the women around you is negative. Like, you can go to a party where there's men and women, and you can be like comparing yourselves to these women because you think the men might pick them over you, and then you just are negatively looking at this woman who's just existing, and she might be doing the same to you. It's so toxic to each other. And like, women and female friendships are so beautiful because we all understand it so much, and that's how we can like bond with each other so like intensely, because we all are having such a universal experience around it. And yet we can also be so horrible to another woman just based on the man's position in that situation.
When we forget our power and that we're more powerful together, that's true. And you just literally spoke words to conversations we've had here before when we've had Elijah and Melissa here about why this time of our life, like that, the clarity on that and all the time we wasted getting pulled into it or being, like the clarity on that, it's one of the reasons I feel like this is the best time in my life, because women in my life is so like, it is so treasured, especially by someone who lives with all men. Right. Like, but this stage in our lives, I do feel like you don't get to a place of real true joy and connection without connecting with women and lifting each other up. You just don't.
Yeah, no, I especially this past summer, like I have spent a majority of my time, if it's not with you guys, it's with my friends. And especially like my main trio of friends are these two beautiful women that are going through the same thing as me in terms of constantly being down on themselves, constantly feeling as though they're not enough, and even just in the male gaze. And deep down, they know they're beautiful. They know they're worthy of everything in the world. And we constantly remind each other of that. And I think it's insane just the way that women are mean to themselves, but then also know that they're like the shit. It's like, it's so interesting.
And this is not that different than talking about burnout at work. Like, there is a system there. Yeah. That is complete. There's a system, there is media, there is everything that's like creating that. So you have to work that much harder to like support each other and keep your gaze on each other for that not to get pulled away,
eyes up here.
Because I've said this for a long time in my background in education, and also having 3 boys, I was always kind of worried about boys in elementary school. I feel like it's not meant for the like normal, and obviously I'm making a lot of gender normative kind of things here, but a lot of typical male, behavior is really hard to put in the box of a classroom and get them to sit still and get, like there's just a lot that happens that gets labeled a problem or attention issues or, a lot of stuff. Sometimes it actually is, but sometimes it's really just, it's a hard place to build self-esteem because it doesn't go with that part of development. But then later, starting like middle school and high school and college, I'm very worried about women, people who identify as female, because this system and the men that are, being somewhat raised and the women that are being raised in that system are all from every angle saying to women, all those things that America said, like, be as smart as the boys, go into STEM. We need more girls in STEM, be successful, go for those roles, be class president, like do this, don't just do this, do all these things, play sports, but also like watch your little brother and your sister, be pretty, be soft, be polite, be sexy. Like we want everything from you. We want you to be all the things and then prove that it's all possible. So that then we can be proud of that and be like,
and knock you down at every stage.
Yeah.
Every stage. We want you to get the letter. We want you to get the grades. We want you to get the crown. We just want you to get it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like within this past year, I have been given a lot of authority in certain projects I've been a part of. For instance, like one of my school productions, I was able to assistant direct it and then choreograph it. And I was doing it alongside another assistant director of mine who's a dear friend and a guy. And then our head director, which was one of our theater teachers, who's also a guy. And I was luckily in the environment where I was not only just supported by all the men and the women in the cast and crew and whatnot, but I was given so much power and I felt worthy of the power and I was able to take it and actually use it. But not without being in my head the whole time being like, I shouldn't be so mean. Oh, I'm being a bitch. Oh, even though I'm simply saying what they should be doing, I feel like a horrible person for it. And it's just so interesting that I'm not allowed to enjoy this power and authority that men have on a daily basis without questioning my own sensitivity around it and how feminine or how whatever it may be, And it was rough because even though I never overstepped my power or abused it in any way, and I really wanted to ensure that I wasn't doing that, and I made sure to check in with people to make sure I wasn't doing that, I still, men don't second guess that power or how they use it,
They don't. I was just thinking, like, what lets you know to do that? And why are the men why is that thought not even occurring to them?
Yeah.
Your mom has a client who got told that she was too direct or,
she should be less ambitious.
Less ambitious. What the fuck does that mean?
What does that mean?
Oh, that's odd.
How do we? I've already been thinking like this is so juicy. We're gonna have to do the part 2 into more you too, because this is like, what do you think it is that's gonna get you to stop worrying about that? Like, what would help you go, I'm just gonna be me and know that I know where that this is coming from the intention and let people think whatever they want.
I don't even know. I mean, maybe with age and just kind of getting to the point where you guys are at, where you just don't give a shit anymore.
No, we don't give a fuck. We give a shit. Yeah.
Sorry. Give a fuck. Maybe with age and just growing more into my skin. And I'm sure, like, for instance, I'm about to work on this other project where one of the writers is a female writer and she's amazing and has a lot of power and control. And maybe it comes with that. Where just as you develop and as you get more confident in your abilities as a woman, you get to a point where you're just like, I'm good. But I don't know if there's any like specific like strategy I could approach to get there right now. But
I'm not even saying like you should have those answers. It's like what's going to help. But
yeah,
it occurs to me, you live with a coach. And there's like this beautiful thing called pre-framing, right? And if you're in a leadership position and you get these responsibilities, congrats, you're badass, you earned them. I wonder if there's an opportunity with the support of that writer to be like, hey, everybody, we're going to do things differently here. I'm a female in leadership and I am working on not worrying about coming off as anything other than somebody who cares about this and cares about you. So let's all agree that that's like, we're all going to come from this place. And not get caught up on labeling each other so we can move through this. Like, it's almost like calling it out before it happens and like really, really hold people to it. I don't know. It's like that's a utopian idea, but I wonder if it's possible. For me,
this is the problem is, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but the problem isn't that anybody did call her out. Right. I think Charlotte led as an assistant director and a choreographer. She led with her heart. She wanted the best show to show up. Right. Nobody on that cast, no one was saying the things
I agree. I'm saying it for her. If she says it and puts it out there,
nobody can say it.
It's not even that. It's not even that she's having anything to do, because a lot of it is projected. You're just projecting it based on a lot of experience. You're saying it so that you're paving the way for you to let it go.
Right. It's like, you're calming your own critter brain versus trying to say it to anybody else.
Yep. Reframing it for yourself.
Yeah.
I even had a rough moment where I think it was getting to our tech week or whatnot, just a stressful time in the process. And I was calling some of the cast members to go and get mic'd so we could start, doing shit. And I was on the stage, they were out in the audience, and I was calling them up. I was like, okay, guys, let's get going. And I definitely will admit that I was probably a little passive aggressive. I was definitely probably losing my patience a bit at this point in the process. And one of them called me a bitch. And I was like, okay.
You got to tell me who that was after
Thank
we
you.
get done.
No. It was totally, and it was more so like, okay, we're going, you don't have to be such a bitch. And it was from a woman who said that. And it was from a dear friend of mine and someone that I had been checking in with, being like, I'm not abusing my power or anything, right? Like, I'm not doing anything, right? And she would be reassuring me and whatnot. And then she didn't mean any ill intent by it. I think it just struck her a little bit, and me being kind of closed off, not gonna really, be passive aggressive towards people for no reason. I don't lose my patience that much. And so I think in this position of power and maybe being a little bit, grabbing at them to keep going and whatnot, I think it was probably getting on their nerves. And the fact that I am still their age and I'm not an adult teacher telling them what to do. I'm just a person with power who happens to also be their age and a person that I'm friends with. And so me and her then had a conversation about it, and it was all sorted out and okay. And she didn't mean it or anything, but just like something like that, where like my nightmare was coming true. This thing that I was thinking in my head, I'm like, oh shit, I am being mean. I'm being a bitch, and something that I never want to be.
But a guy, they wouldn't have said it to a guy.
They wouldn't have.
I think, the thing that comes down and the thing that when you ask that question of Charlotte, it reminds me of going back to the diet culture bites, because Charlotte grew up with a woman who tried really hard to not make food have a morality. She's going through her teen years with a woman who is all about women empowerment and is, we have discussions all the time where you dissect things with me and we try to flesh it out and I reframe or coach or show whatever, and it still doesn't fucking matter. So I do think there is an aspect. I think your answer is right. And it goes back to what we said, the things we wished we knew. I would love to have Charlotte be me now. She can't. I just think it's different.
I think that's,
I don't know what it is,
yeah.
but I don't think it's actually possible. But the thing that the hope I have is that, like we say to our clients, like, once you know, you can't unknow. So while it's not like she doesn't fight against it, she does know to catch herself and ask me or talk to her friends about it or whatever. And that's a shit ton better than where you and I were at that
for
age.
sure. And Charlotte, does it help with like the Weinsteins and the Epsteins and like, does it help to know that like justice is happening in even though it's just a drop in the bucket? Does it help? Does it give you and women your age more ability to call stuff out?
Okay. I could go on a bit of a tangent here because I have many different aspects of this topic. I think, yes, it's beneficial to know that kind of stuff, to know that people are watching out for that kind of stuff. And even when it comes down to me being in a public setting and getting hit on by some guy, I've had times where I'm standing in the train station on the platform and a guy just has come up and hit on me. I dismiss it, whatnot. And then a girl comes up to me and she's like, did he just hit on you? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I'm sorry. Like, it's a universal experience that women know this. So like, we are aware, we looking for those surroundings. But when it comes to justice being served, I've had times, like in middle school, for instance, there was a guy who, got accused for sexual assault and harassment by 15 girls. And I was one of those girls. And a police officer came in and he talked to all of us and jack shit happened, So it's not in the same way Barbie is getting arrested for punching the guy who assaulted her.
Right.
And then the police officers are assaulting her.
They're also
harassing her. So it's sure we can get all the justice we want, but it's not actually doing anything.
Yeah. I was thinking that's what you were going to say, because my boys would say the same thing. It's too little. It's too little, and it's not consistent.
And it's only because women came forward. So often we just blow it off.
Because
brush
we
it
know
off.
nothing's going to come if we say anything.
Right.
And here's another instance. This is recent. Like last weekend, I had a little party, a little get together at my place, and it was a majority of guys over women. There was 3 girls and however many guys. And we are at the pool. It's around like, I don't know, 6 o'clock. It's later. But the sun's still out, and we're all in the hot tub. All the boys have their shirts off and they're in the hot tub. And then me and one of the girls we just have our feet in the water, but we're clothed, like we have bathing suits, but we have like cover-ups on. And then our other friend is in the hot tub, but like completely under the water. So really the only thing exposed is just these pubescent boys with their shirts off or whatever. And we're all sitting in the hot tub, and a guy comes around and he does a few loops and he's just being really odd. And at first one of our guy friends says to the guy, who after being a little weird, and is like, hey, is everything good? And this odd man is like, yeah, no, I'm just exercising. And he's just like doing random things with his arms and being very odd. So then he goes and sits in a chair that's close to the hot tub. And he takes out his phone and he starts recording us. But in a way where he's trying to like be sly about it. So he's like going over here, and then he'll go over here, and then he'll come back to us in the hot tub, and then he'll come over here, and then he'll come back to us in the hot tub. And it's just getting really weird, and we're all incredibly uncomfortable. And as a woman, we know this. This is no big deal. We like, it's scary, but we know this, and the dudes don't. And I think that's another thing, is getting close with guy friends and hanging out with them. They aren't even aware that this is a thing that happens, because it doesn't happen to them. It only happens to us. And so when I tell guys that I get catcalled, 6 times on a 5-minute walk, they're like, what? No way. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But anyway, so back to this hot tub instance, this guy's recording us. And something that I would never do, but only felt the confidence to do so because it was a majority of men there. I yell over to the guy, dog, what are you doing? And he does not say a word, and he just keeps videotaping. And then one of our other friends gets up out of the hot tub, a man, and he goes over and he's like, hey man, you got to stop. We are uncomfortable. You're making us uncomfortable. And he gets up and he leaves. But that man did not respond to me when I said anything, but he responds to a different man going up to him and telling him to stop. And I didn't really know what to think of the situation, because it was a majority of guys and all of us girls were covered. And like, I was just like, I don't know what kind of predatory thing that was. And then it was later in the night when we were digesting it again, and all the dudes were kind of like, I mean, that seemed like that was about you guys, like you guys meaning the girls. And I'm like, really? Because we were like covered up. But then I realized he didn't respond to me when I told him to stop, but he stops when a different guy tells him to stop. So it's just like, it's like we can't even escape it in the comfort of being with other dudes, or
because that's like a false like that's a false sense of security.
So even if
because nobody's safe from patriarchy.
Yes, nope, exactly. So even if I call it out, even if anything happens, like even if it even comes down to justice systems, and coming down to when I was 12, I got preyed on by this guy in a Jack in the Box. And it was one of my really first big moments getting like really preyed on, because he sat down next to me. He was telling me how beautiful I was. I told him I was 12. He kept talking to me. He offered to drive me home. He gave me all these really weird offers. And then I got out of there and I ran home, and then he followed me in his car. And so then when I got home, I told them. And I went to a police station. I told them about the instance, and obviously the man didn't actually touch me or do anything to get him in a jail cell or anything like that. But I was just like, wanted to do it more so for like the outlook of like, hey, if you see this guy that looks like this, he could be
he's harassing girls. Yeah.
And also just, it was my first time having something so intense like that happen. So like, what do I do in this case? And the police guy listened, but he was just kind of like, call this number if you need help. And I'm like, okay, thanks. That'll do me good. Thank you. Get on my way. I'm like, I'm 12 and I'm telling you this, and you don't seem to have any sort of empathy. But anyways.
And what's good is that you thought to do it. What's bad is that so little has changed.
Yeah. So even though, yes, it's important to shed light and the fact that there can be justice taken and talked about when it comes to harassment and assault and whatnot, we don't ever really feel, it's not like a safety blanket knowing that that's there, because they don't listen to women.
I asked that kind of assuming that's what you'd say, but
You were hoping for a better answer.
No,
I told you I'd
I
go on a
wasn't.
tangent.
I wasn't. I ask it because I think people assume, good, justice, like we don't have to worry about it anymore. And I think we see that all the time. It's just the same thing as people feeling like, you know, having the audacity to think racism is a thing of the past. No, it is like, as long as like these systems are still holding it up, as long as it's in us and in our culture to keep handing down certain norms, it's going to be harder to turn this around. And which is why it goes back to something I said in that sisterhood, like those of us raising men have a big job.
Yeah.
Because it's not Charlotte's responsibility to change the world with like how she dresses or responds or speaks up. It's not on her shoulders.
Right.
It's on like the people who are raising men have a big responsibility.
I mean, this has been an amazing conversation, and I'm so very grateful for Charlotte for coming on and sharing all this stuff I had forgotten. But, you know, the reality of it is she's 17 years old, and this has been happening at least 6 years. I don't feel like we saw it quite as much when you were younger, but you were also super involved in things and we weren't out in the public as much. I think there is a part 2 of this, and we'll probably come back and discuss it at another time. But this has been fantastic. So thank you so much. You are a badass, and I am so proud of you. You're communicative, you're smart. Like any teenage girl, you bump up against your own worst enemy, which is your brain, and the things it says to you, but you know who you fucking are. And I love that. And I think it's only going to get better. We have 2 songs because I asked Charlotte to come up with one, and her lyric is so creepy that I'm going to let her end with it because it really, but I had a song I really wanted to share because this song always it hits me every time. So I wanted to read my lyrics first, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll have you quote.
If that's okay. You don't need to ask permission, Lisa.
I know, thank you. So my song is Golden Child from a twin sister duo, Say Lulu. They happen to be the daughters of Steve Kilby, who is the lead singer of The Church. So that's how I know them. And this song every time just gets me. So I'm going to read several lyrics because the whole song is just so beautiful. And again, it'll be on the playlist. So the song is called Golden Child. It goes, they're going to cut you to the core, going to try to cool you down. And they'll shame you when you flirt, but they'll hate it when you frown. But there's a fire burning in your bones tonight, desire hiding in your glowing eyes. Look through the glass to the other side. I see you standing where I used to be. I feel you frozen when you could be free. They find a way to keep control. They'll try to own you with an ancient glance. They're going to set you into stone. And then I bet they'll ask, why don't you dance? I know. Look, I literally have all the hairs on my arms because it kills me every time. It is.
And then they'll tell you to smile.
Yep.
Come on, give me a smile. Yeah.
Okay.
See?
And your line is from?
My line is from Shocker, The Strokes, a band that I never shut the fuck up about.
True.
I love the Strokes.
But it's from their song Life is Simple in the Moonlight, off their album Angles. And the line is she sees her father in that old man's eyes while secretly he stares at her thighs. I love that line because it's so true.
It grosses me out so much.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you're taking it literally. What if it's just talking about patriarchy?
It's still gross. Because it's true. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there is no age range where this stops, I think is the thing, right? Like when you talk about all the men that have catcalled you especially in the last few years, they range in ages. It's not just young kids. It's not 20s. It's all the ages. And as long as there are systemic ways to let them just keep doing this, it's going to keep happening. And we can't let that be the thing that keeps us from calling it out.
Yeah,
the
it's
time. And
it's interesting. Oh, sorry, didn't.
I guess I'll just finish and then we have to call it out, but our men, our Allens have to call it out too. And
Yeah, I'm listening to you, and like there is a fight in me, but I feel like almost like you can't fight fire with fire. I feel like there's a great softening with the Allens. Like there's a great softening that we get to do to just kind of fight this differently, to fight it in a different way instead of like, like
and
I
maybe
feel like there's
Barbie's
something.
the beginning. Maybe Barbie's the beginning. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing if this was something that actually made, I mean, it's made $1 billion. It's made more money than Batman.
Which
right?
is
Like,
which is also interesting because like Mattel makes a ton of money off Barbie. That's like why they made Barbie. They wanted to make
I
a
don't
ton of
even give a
money.
shit.
I know.
You know what? It's
But what's funny about it is like it made a lot of money, and that's what it was all about. It wasn't ever trying to be anti-feminine or feminist. Like it was just trying to make money, just business.
I bet Greta Gerwig wanted it to be feminist.
Oh, she did. I'm talking about Barbie, like Mattel. Like the actual doll.
Right, but I'm saying the movie has made $1 billion. That's what I'm saying. So, like, could this be the beginning of? It's a tiny stone in a pond, but could this be something?
Right. All I was saying was it's just ironic that like
Yes.
it is going to be the thing that when it was like,
that's
just
true.
a corporate thing.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, Charlotte, for being with us. And just for knowing what's right and standing in your power. That's huge. That's powerful. And that's going against the grain. And I'm just heartened that you have that language. And I hope you feel more support from everyone. I hope you start to see a tide changing and behind you. Because it's clear we have a long way to go.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to assume, since you're listening to this podcast, that something from this resonated. This could perhaps be another episode that feels really important to share with your teenage daughters and nieces and friends and daughters of friends. So please share this episode in particular, or any of our pods that feel important to share. We appreciate it. We're so pleased with the feedback we've gotten. And when we talk about something like this, it feels even more important to me to get this out on a broader spectrum. So again, thank you, Charlotte.
Oh, of course.
I'm going to go ahead and add, share it with your boys.
Oh,
also that.
Share it with them boys.
Yeah, no question. Well, thanks everyone. That's the things we know for this week, and we will be back next week.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.